there's probably a sentence you want to say about yourself that still feels slightly ridiculous in your mouth. Maybe it's, I'm powerful. Maybe I'm disciplined. I'm someone people respect. I can build something extraordinary. I'm worthy of a completely different life. And almost immediately, another voice shows up to correct you. Come on, look at the evidence. Because right now maybe you're inconsistent. Maybe your bank account doesn't match the vision. Maybe you still hesitate when you speak. Maybe nobody around you sees the person you secretly imagine becoming. So saying those words feels dishonest, almost embarrassing, like wearing a jacket that clearly doesn't belong to you yet. And strangely enough, that feeling might be the beginning of everything. Because of course it feels like a lie. You're describing someone your current life hasn't learned how to recognize yet. You're speaking from a version of yourself that doesn't have enough evidence behind it. Not enough memories, not enough wins, not enough repetition. Your old identity, on the other hand, has years of receipts, maybe thousands of them. Every awkward moment, every rejection, every abandoned promise, every time you told yourself, see, this is just who I am. So when a new identity enters the room and says, actually, we're not doing that anymore, your mind doesn't welcome it with applause. It looks at it like a stranger who somehow got into the house. Who are you? You don't belong here. And most people retreat right there. They mistake unfamiliarity for dishonesty. But consider something uncomfortable. Nearly everything you believe about yourself was unfamiliar once. You weren't born believing you were shy, or bad with money, or terrible at relationships, or undisciplined, or just not a confident person. Those identities were built, slowly, a comment here, a failure there, a few painful experiences that seemed to confirm one another. Maybe someone laughed when you spoke up, so you became quieter the next time. Then you received less attention because you were quiet, which became more evidence that you weren't interesting. Eventually, nobody had to convince you anymore. You did the convincing for them. What began as an interpretation hardened into a personality. A story repeated enough times stopped feeling like a story and started feeling like truth. And that's where the real conversation begins, because your life is shaped by far more than what happens to you. It's shaped by what you notice, what you expect, what you interpret, and what you believe you're allowed to do next. Your brain is constantly filtering an absurd amount of information, deciding what deserves your attention and what gets thrown away before you ever consciously see it. Attention works a little like walking through a crowded room while listening for your name. Hundreds of conversations are happening, glasses are clinking, chairs are moving, but someone whispers your name 3 tables away and somehow your ears catch it. Why? Because your mind has marked it as important. Identity does something similar. Tell yourself long enough that opportunity never comes your way, and you become remarkably skilled at finding closed doors. Start believing you're someone who can create opportunity, and suddenly you notice handles you never thought to turn. Same hallway, different person walking through it. Here's where people usually get the order backwards. They look at life and say, once something out there changes, then something in here can change. Once the money arrives, you'll feel successful. Once your body changes, you'll feel confident. Once people respect you, you'll start acting like a leader. Once somebody loves you properly, then you'll finally feel worthy of love. Sounds reasonable, very mature even. There's only one problem. You've handed your identity over to circumstances that are partly influenced by that identity in the first place. You're standing in front of a mirror saying, I'll smile when the reflection smiles first. And the mirror, naturally, waits. That's the trap. Have, do, be. When I have the resources, I'll do what successful people do, and then I'll finally be successful. When I have confidence, I'll speak up, and then I'll become confident. Except confidence usually doesn't arrive before the uncomfortable conversation. Leadership doesn't magically appear before you take responsibility. Discipline rarely knocks on the door before you start keeping promises to yourself. You've been waiting for an emotional permission slip that action was supposed to create. So years can disappear in preparation. Another course, another plan, another notebook, another Monday, another when things calm down. There's always one more condition that needs to be perfect before you're finally allowed to become the person you keep thinking about late at night. And meanwhile, your existing identity keeps collecting evidence for itself. Psychology has names for parts of this process: confirmation bias, selective attention, self-fulfilling expectations. Fancy terms for something painfully simple. You tend to notice what fits the story you already believe. If you're convinced nobody takes you seriously, you walk into a conversation differently. Your voice may soften. You over-explain. You apologize before you've said anything wrong. You avoid disagreeing. Other people respond to those signals, perhaps giving you less authority, and now you have proof. See? Nobody takes me seriously. But notice what happened. Belief didn't magically rearrange the universe. Belief changed perception. Perception changed behavior. Behavior influenced response. Response became evidence. Then evidence strengthened belief. A loop was born. And after enough loops, it feels like fate. You can run that machinery in the opposite direction. Not by pretending facts don't exist. Not by staring at an empty bank account and insisting there's secretly $1 million inside it. Not by ignoring consequences, responsibilities, skill gaps, or reality. Something much more powerful is possible: choosing a different assumption about who you are becoming, then behaving in ways that give that assumption a chance to become true. Maybe you've been saying, "I'm terrible at finishing things." Fine, old story. Now the new claim is, "I'm someone who finishes what matters." At first your history may laugh at you. Let it. Finish one small thing anyway, then another. Keep one promise. Send the email. Complete the workout. Close one open loop you've been avoiding. Suddenly the lie has a witness. Tiny evidence, sure, but evidence. A brick has been placed. And once you understand how those bricks work, the entire architecture of identity changes. A stronger order is almost embarrassingly simple. Be, do, have. Become internally, act accordingly, then allow the results to accumulate. Not because saying "I'm wealthy" makes money fall through the ceiling. Not because reality is a vending machine for affirmations. Becoming first matters because identity changes the quality of your decisions. A person who sees themselves as healthy doesn't negotiate with every healthy choice like it's punishment. A person who sees themselves as a creator stops waiting for inspiration to grant permission. Someone who believes they belong in the room starts making eye contact differently, asking better questions, tolerating less nonsense, recovering faster from rejection. Being changes doing. Doing repeated long enough changes having. And eventually what once required effort becomes normal enough that you barely remember fighting yourself over it. Here's the strange part though. In the beginning, your new identity will probably feel fake. Good. That doesn't mean you've chosen incorrectly. It may simply mean there isn't enough evidence yet. Imagine moving into a dark house you've never seen before. At first, your hands are on the walls. You bump into furniture. Every step feels uncertain. A week later, you can walk to the kitchen half asleep without thinking. The house didn't change. Your relationship with it did. Identity works in a similar way. New beliefs feel awkward because your nervous system has no map for them. So you build the map through repetition. You say, "I'm someone who speaks clearly." Then you speak even when your voice shakes. "I'm someone who respects my time." Then you finally say no to something you've resented for 6 months. "I'm someone who can build wealth." Then you learn, save, negotiate, create, sell, invest carefully, and stop treating every financial mistake as proof of permanent incompetence. The statement begins ahead of the evidence. Action slowly brings the evidence closer. Micro-proof matters more than people realize. Most people are waiting for one dramatic moment to validate their transformation. The huge contract, the perfect body, the applause, the breakthrough that makes everyone finally understand. Real identity change is usually quieter. Someone listens when you speak. You catch yourself responding calmly where the old version of you would have exploded. You keep a promise nobody knew you made. You notice an opportunity you would have dismissed 6 months ago. You recover from a bad day without turning it into a bad month. Write those moments down, not because journaling is magical, but because your mind is constantly deciding what counts as evidence. Give it better evidence to work with. You're building a legal case for a new self. One exhibit won't convince the jury. 50 might. Eventually, your mind begins defending the new identity with the same intensity it once defended the old one. And your environment matters because identities are contagious. Spend enough time around people who constantly rehearse limitation, and eventually, limitation starts sounding like common sense. Keep objects, habits, conversations, and routines from a version of yourself you claim to have outgrown, and you'll keep receiving little reminders to return there. So change the cues, not theatrically. You don't need to buy an expensive watch and call yourself successful. Start smaller and more honestly. Clean the room where you're supposed to think. Put the book where you'll actually read it. Remove the app that steals an hour every night. Choose clothes that make you stand a little straighter. Protect an hour for the work your future depends on. Spend more time around people whose standards make your excuses feel outdated. Your surroundings are whispering instructions all day. Make sure they're teaching the identity you're trying to grow into. Because eventually, the strangest thing happens. You stop performing the new person. You just become difficult to recognize as the old one. So choose the lie carefully. Not a lie about reality, a lie about limitation. Say something your past doesn't have enough evidence to support yet, but your future could. I'm disciplined. I'm courageous. I'm capable of building something meaningful. I'm someone who finishes. I'm worthy of being seen. Then don't sit there chanting it while living exactly the same way. Give the sentence a body. Ask yourself, if this were already part of who I am, what would I do today? Not next year. Not when motivation arrives. Today. Maybe you make the call. Maybe you train for 20 minutes. Maybe you finally publish the thing. Maybe you stop returning to a relationship that requires you to shrink. Maybe you go to bed when you said you would. Small actions look almost insulting compared with huge dreams, but they're how dreams acquire bones. One day, if you keep going, you'll say the same sentence and notice there's no resistance anymore. No inner argument. No need to convince yourself. What once sounded arrogant will simply sound accurate. The lie will have gathered behavior, memory, evidence, scars, competence, and repetition until there's nothing left to call it except your life. So don't wait for your most powerful self to arrive and introduce itself. Give that version of you a name before there's proof. Give it standards before there's applause. Give it action before there's certainty. Then walk toward it long enough that the distance between who you claim to be and who you actually are finally disappears. Because the most powerful version of you may begin as a lie, but only because the truth hasn't caught up yet.